Okay, so have you ever felt like you're just constantly like reacting to things,
Yeah.
putting out fires instead of setting your own agenda?
Yeah, definitely.
Like you're missing some kind of key piece of the puzzle when it comes to just getting what you want,
Total.
whether it's in your career or relationships or even just daily life, you know?
I think that's a pretty common feeling.
Yeah.
And it's one that Machiavelli,
Oh, here we go.
author of The Prince,
Yeah.
was very aware of.
Yep.
You see, he was writing during a time of just crazy political turmoil
Oh, yeah.
in Renaissance Italy.
It was a crazy time.
Backstabbing, shifting alliances, ruthless power grabs.
Game of Thrones.
It really was.
Yeah.
It was a game where the stakes were really high.
For sure.
Knowing how to use power effectively
Yeah.
meant the difference between success and just utter failure.
So you're saying his book, The Prince, wasn't just some like theoretical,
No, not at all.
abuse-
So it was a practical guidebook,
Okay.
almost a blueprint
I like that.
on how to navigate those waters.
Okay, so for this deep dive, then we're going to unpack the first 4 chapters.
Yeah.
And extract those core principles of power dynamics.
Right.
And figure out how they can work for us, in the 21st century.
Absolutely.
All right.
What's so fascinating here is that Machiavelli, he doesn't shy away from the reality of power. The good, the bad,
The ugly.
and the downright ugly.
He keeps it real.
He does.
Okay.
He was writing for rulers.
Right.
But the principles that he lays out are really relevant for anyone who wants to understand how influence works.
Okay.
So whether you're leading a team or negotiating a raise,
Even just getting your point across,
exactly,
in a meeting.
more effectively, yeah.
So let's go back to Machiavelli's world.
Okay.
Renaissance Italy.
All right.
So imagine a patchwork of rival city-states.
Yeah.
Each of them are vying for dominance.
Constant struggle.
It's not a time for idealism.
No.
It's a time for pragmatism and understanding the mechanics of power.
How things actually work.
Yeah.
And that's where Machiavelli comes in.
Okay.
He wasn't some ivory tower philosopher.
Right.
He had firsthand experience
Yeah.
in the political arena.
He was in the trenches?
He served as a diplomat and a government official.
Wow. Okay.
And in fact, in his letter to Francesco Vettori,
Yeah.
he even talks about how he would spend his evenings studying history and the tactics of great leaders,
Interesting.
picking up insights from both their triumphs and their blunders.
Their failures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's taking all those lessons learned,
Oh.
those observations from the front lines of power,
Yeah.
and he's distilling them into The Prince.
That's pretty cool.
Ugh.
Have you just even hear you describe it like that? You can see why it's resonated
Yeah,
across the centuries.
absolutely.
He's not preaching.
No,
He's analyzing and strategizing.
he's giving you the tools.
I like it. Okay.
So right from the start, in
Yeah.
chapter 1,
Okay.
Machiavelli gets down to business.
Right.
He breaks down different types of principalities. Okay.
Hereditary, new, mixed.
So he's categorizing them.
He is.
Okay.
And he really emphasizes that the strategies for gaining and maintaining power are different,
Oh, interesting.
depending on where you're starting from.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like he's saying, know your terrain before you make your move.
Right, know where you are.
Exactly.
Okay.
And he's big on learning from history,
Yeah,
not just the success stories,
right.
but the failures too.
Learn from your mistakes and other people's.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He even name drops some major players like Louis XII of France,
Okay.
who, let's just say, didn't quite grasp the complexities of Italian politics
Made some mistakes.
and ended up making some costly mistakes.
So learn from Louis.
Don't be like Louis.
Okay, got it.
And this highlights Machiavelli's central point.
What's that?
Be a realist.
Okay.
See the world as it is not as you wish it to be.
As it should be.
Right.
Okay.
If you want to succeed in the game of power,
Uh-huh.
you need to understand the rules, even if they're not always pretty.
Even if they're not pretty.
All right, so no sugarcoating here.
No sugarcoating.
Let's move on to Chapter 2,
Okay.
the heart of Machiavelli's playbook.
This is where it gets good.
This is where he lays out
Yeah.
some of his most controversial but enduring principles.
He's basically saying, here are the tools, use them wisely.
Okay, I like it.
One of the most impactful tools,
Okay,
and perhaps the most debated,
okay.
is the idea that a ruler, and by extension, anyone seeking influence, should aim to be both feared and loved.
Both.
but
If you have to choose.
if you have to choose,
Oh.
fear wins.
Fear wins.
Oh, that sounds a bit harsh,
It does a little bit.
especially in our modern context.
Yeah,
But Machiavelli had his reasons.
I'm sure he did.
He believed that fear is a more reliable motivator than love,
Interesting.
especially when it comes to keeping people in line.
Oh, so it's more about control.
It's about maintaining order.
Okay.
Remember, he wasn't advocating for cruelty
Okay.
for its own sake.
Right.
He saw it as a tool,
A tool.
one to be used strategically
Okay.
and sparingly.
Sparingly.
He actually makes a distinction between needless cruelty,
Right.
which can really backfire,
Yeah.
and cruelty with a purpose.
Okay.
Actions taken quickly and decisively
To establish order.
to establish order
Get that.
or eliminate a threat.
So like a surgeon,
You got it.
you don't do it for fun,
Right.
but sometimes it's necessary.
Sometimes it's necessary for the greater good.
I see what you mean. And even then,
Yes.
you got to be precise and efficient.
You don't want to drag it out.
Don't create resentment
Exactly.
or instability.
You got to act decisively
Okay.
and then focus on rebuilding.
Okay. So it's really nuanced.
It is.
It's not just be cruel.
No.
It's be strategic.
Be strategic and know when and how.
Okay.
Another tool Machiavelli highlights is the power of appearances.
Appearances.
The idea that how you are perceived often matters more than the reality.
So he's saying fake it till you make it.
Well, it can be, but it's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
He's saying that in the realm of power,
Mhm.
perception is everything.
Interesting.
If people believe you are strong, competent, and in control,
Okay.
they will follow you, even if you're not always those things behind closed doors.
So it's about building a personal brand.
Exactly.
You have to project the image that you want people to see.
Right.
The qualities that inspire confidence and trust.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And this ties back to his point about fear.
Okay.
If you appear weak
Uh-huh.
or indecisive, you become a target.
A target.
You invite challenges and you potentially create chaos.
So it's almost like self-preservation,
It is.
projecting strength
Yeah.
to avoid being seen as vulnerable.
Precisely.
Okay.
And this leads to another crucial point.
Okay.
Machiavelli was a huge proponent of self-reliance,
Okay.
especially when it comes to military strength.
Okay.
He was totally against relying on mercenaries or allies
Interesting.
because he believed they were inherently unreliable in the long run.
So be able to defend yourself,
Defend yourself.
your interests.
Yes.
Don't be at the mercy of others.
Exactly.
I mean, we see that play out even today, right?
They do.
The companies that outsource everything become incredibly vulnerable,
Yeah, they lose control.
and they lose control of their core,
Resources or capabilities.
resources, capabilities. Yeah, exactly.
It's about having that internal strength
Okay.
to weather the storms.
And this self-reliance extends, I guess, beyond just like physical strength or resources.
Absolutely.
It's also about the skills and knowledge to navigate challenges independently,
Right. You don't always have to rely on other people.
to solve your problems.
Right.
Okay, I'm seeing how these ideas apply beyond just politics.
Yeah.
It's not just about ruling a country.
No.
These are principles of influence and strategy that can be valuable in a lot of different areas.
It can be valuable whether you're running a company, leading a team, or even just trying to get your point across more effectively.
In a meeting.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Machiavelli is really giving us a framework here
Okay.
for understanding how power dynamics work
On a fundamental level.
on a fundamental level.
And that's useful,
Yeah, no matter what your goals are.
no matter what you want to do.
Exactly.
All right, so with these tools in mind,
Yes.
let's move on to Chapter 3
Okay, let's go.
and meet one of history's most notorious figures,
All right.
Cesare Borgia.
Borgia.
Wasn't he rumored to be the inspiration for The Godfather?
I think he was.
Talk about a Machiavellian character.
He certainly fits the bill.
Yeah.
Get ready. This is where things get really interesting
Oh.
and maybe a little unsettling.
Okay, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we left off with Cesare Borgia,
Oh, yeah.
a figure almost synonymous with just ruthlessness and ambition.
Definitely.
Chapter 3 of The Prince is basically a case study in Borgia's methods,
It is.
and it's not for the faint of heart.
Not at all.
What's fascinating about this chapter is how Machiavelli uses Borgia as a prime example of both brilliant strategy
Yeah.
and calculated brutality.
He really does.
I mean, he seems to admire Borgia's effectiveness,
he does.
his ability to just seize opportunities
Yes.
and eliminate threats.
He was very good at that.
But he also acknowledges the moral complexities involved.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, this isn't about condoning cruelty.
No.
It's about understanding how it was used as a tool for consolidating power
Right.
in this really volatile period.
In a very specific context.
Machiavelli even points out instances where Borgia's cruelty backfired,
He does.
creating resentment and instability.
Yeah, it wasn't always a winning strategy.
Right, it wasn't a perfect system.
No, exactly.
One of the most striking examples is that incident where Borgia used that false peace treaty
Oh, yeah.
to lure his rivals into a trap,
A classic move.
invited them to a meeting,
Yeah.
seemingly to reconcile, and then just had them all
Captured and executed.
captured and executed.
Ruthless.
That's cold-blooded,
It is.
even by Renaissance standards.
Yeah.
I mean, is Machiavelli actually endorsing this kind of deception?
Well, that's the question.
Yeah.
That's haunted readers for centuries.
Right.
I mean, he certainly seems to admire
He does.
Borgia's tactical brilliance and
Yeah.
decisiveness.
Decisiveness.
But remember, he's writing from a realist's perspective.
Okay.
He's showing us what can be done.
What was done?
The strategies that were employed,
Yeah.
not necessarily prescribing them as the only
Most ethical.
or even the most ethical
Right.
course of action.
So he's like, here's how the game was played.
Yeah.
Here's what worked.
This is what they did.
But you have to decide
You decide.
what kind of player you want to be.
Exactly.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, that's the power of the prince.
Okay.
It doesn't offer easy answers or simplistic solutions.
Right.
It challenges you to confront these questions,
These hard questions.
these difficult questions,
Yeah.
to consider the trade-offs.
The trade-offs. Yeah.
And to make your own judgment.
To think for yourself.
Yeah, about what's necessary and what crosses the line.
Okay, so it's really pushing us to think critically.
It is.
To analyze not just what happened, but why,
Yeah.
and what the potential consequences might be.
The second and third order effect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So chapter 4 shifts gears a
It
bit.
does.
Instead of focusing on someone like Borgia, who was born into power,
Right.
we meet Castruccio,
Castracani.
a leader who rose from humble beginnings
Yeah.
through sheer talent, ambition,
Ambition.
and a healthy dose of daring.
It's a rags to riches story.
Yeah, but in the world of politics and warfare.
Exactly.
Okay, so Machiavelli uses Castruccio's life
Yeah.
as an example of what happens when natural talent meets opportunity.
Right place, right time.
Yeah. He highlights Castruccio's strategic brilliance,
He does.
his ability to think several steps ahead.
Like a chess master.
Yeah, like a chess grandmaster, planning out his moves.
Planning out those moves.
And he wasn't just a big-picture strategist.
Yeah.
Machiavelli emphasizes Castruccio's tactical skill as well.
On the ground.
Yeah, his ability to adapt to changing circumstances
Yes.
on the battlefield
Battlefield.
and make quick decisions.
And decisive action.
Yeah,
That often surprised his enemies.
so he was known for his boldness, his
Yeah.
willingness to take risks.
Calculated risks.
Yeah, and seize the initiative.
He knew that momentum is crucial
Okay.
in any kind of contest of power.
Whether it's a military campaign or a business negotiation.
It applies across domains.
So we've got Borgia, the master manipulator,
Yeah.
Castruccio, the bold strategist.
Two very different approaches,
Two very different approaches to power.
but both highlighted by Machiavelli.
What's the takeaway here?
The takeaway is that there's no single blueprint for success.
Okay.
Machiavelli is showing us different facets of power dynamics,
Yep.
different tools and strategies that can be effective.
Depending on the situation,
Yeah.
your personality,
Yeah.
and even as he acknowledges a bit of luck.
A little bit of luck.
Okay, so it's like he's giving us a toolbox,
He is.
but it's up to us to figure out which tools to use.
You got to pick the right tool for the job.
And when-
to use it.
Yeah, and how to adapt them to our own specific circumstances.
Adapt and refine.
Exactly.
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
And actionable.
Actionable. I like it.
We've laid the groundwork, explored the historical context,
Yeah.
and we've looked at Machiavelli's core principles.
Yeah.
Now let's bring it all together
Yeah.
and figure out how we can apply these insights
How do we apply these insights?
to our own lives, our careers, and our relationships.
All right, I'm ready to put Machiavelli to work.
Let's do it.
So where do we begin?
Let's start with relationships.
Relationships.
Yeah,
I mean, Machiavelli might not be the first person that comes to mind.
probably not.
When you think about building strong connections,
No.
I thought he was all about cutthroat politics
Yeah.
and winning at all costs.
Winning at all costs.
How does that translate to something like personal relationships?
Well, remember Machiavelli was all about understanding reality.
All right.
And the reality is that power dynamics exist in every relationship.
Every relationship.
Even the most loving ones.
Really?
Think about it.
Okay.
Who has more influence in your relationships?
Okay.
Who tends to make the final decisions?
Yeah.
Who gets their way more often?
I mean, it's not always equal.
It's not.
That's for sure.
Right?
And sometimes those power imbalances can create friction
They can?
or even resentment.
Absolutely.
But-
Now, Machiavelli wouldn't advocate for constant power struggles
Okay.
in your personal life.
Right.
He's not saying you need to be domineering
Okay.
or manipulative,
Check.
but he is saying that you need to be aware of these dynamics.
Aware.
Understand how they affect the relationship
Yeah.
and use that knowledge to create a more balanced.
Balanced and fulfilling.
So it's about being strategic, but in a way that benefits both parties.
Exactly.
One of the key takeaways from the prince that we can apply here is the importance of making yourself valuable to others.
Valuable.
Machiavelli talks about this need to cultivate your skills and abilities
Okay.
to become someone that others rely on and seek out.
So it's about building a reputation for competence and reliability.
Exactly.
Being the go-to person.
Being that go-to person.
But for advice or support.
Yes.
Okay.
And this plays into the concept of self-reliance as well.
Self-reliance. Okay.
The more you can do for yourself,
Yeah.
the less dependent you are on others.
Right.
And that can actually shift the power dynamic in your favor.
In your favor.
It's not about being aloof or independent to a fault, but it's about having the confidence and the ability to handle things on your own
I see.
when you need to.
Okay, so we're building our skill sets.
Yes.
Making ourselves indispensable.
Indispensable.
Becoming more self-reliant.
Self-reliant.
How does the idea of appearances fit into this?
Well, remember, Machiavelli was all about perception. He believed that it's more important to appear virtuous.
Than to actually be virtuous.
Is to actually be virtuous, at least when it comes to maintaining power.
Okay.
Now, we're not suggesting you become a master of deception in your relationships.
Right.
But there is something to be said for being mindful
Okay.
of how you present yourself.
Mindful of how you present yourself.
Yes.
Okay.
It's about being aware of the signals you're sending.
So like nonverbal cues.
Nonverbal cues, your body language,
Yeah.
your tone of voice,
Okay.
and ensuring that they align with the image you want to project.
The image you want to project.
Think about the people you admire.
Okay.
What qualities do they embody? How do they make you feel?
Okay.
Those are the things that you can consciously cultivate in yourself.
That's interesting. I'm starting to think about how I approach my interactions differently now.
It changes your perspective.
It's not just about what I say.
No.
It's how I say it, how I carry myself, the energy I bring to the table.
It's that whole package.
Exactly.
Okay, and this awareness can be really powerful, especially when it comes to negotiation.
Negotiation.
Yeah, the ultimate test of power dynamics.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, so Machiavelli has a lot to say about this.
He does.
What does he say?
He believes that successful negotiation
Okay.
is all about understanding your leverage.
Leverage.
Well, what you have that the other person...
What you have that they want.
What are their weaknesses?
Their weaknesses.
And what are your limits?
What are your limits?
What are you willing to walk away from?
So it's like a game of chess.
It is.
Trying to anticipate their moves and outmaneuver them.
In a way, yes.
Okay.
But it's not about being adversarial
Okay.
or manipulative.
Okay.
It's about being strategic.
Strategic.
Approaching the negotiation with clarity, confidence.
And a willingness to
Yeah.
walk away if the deal isn't right for you.
Oh, that's important.
It is.
Knowing when to walk away.
You got to know your walkaway point. Remember, Machiavelli was a big believer in being prepared.
He was.
Or what did he say?
He'd say, never go into a negotiation without knowing what you want
What you want.
and what you're willing to concede.
What you're willing to concede.
Your boundaries.
I think a lot of people struggle with that.
They do.
Feeling like they have to say yes to everything.
Yeah.
Or being afraid to assert their needs.
Or just being afraid to walk away.
Yeah,
And that puts you in a weaker position.
it does.
Remember Machiavelli would say,
What would he say?
it's better to be feared than loved.
Oh.
Now, again, we're not advocating for tyranny
Okay.
in your personal life,
Right.
but there is something to be said for having boundaries
Boundaries.
and being willing to enforce them.
To enforce them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's about finding that balance.
That balance between
being assertive and being likable.
Okay.
Being firm but not aggressive.
Not aggressive.
Right.
Okay.
And here's where the idea of appearances comes into play again.
Appearances.
Even if you're feeling nervous or unsure,
Okay.
you want to project an image of confidence and competence.
So even if you're not feeling it.
Fake it till you make it.
Okay.
Sometimes just appearing to be in control can tip the scales in your favor.
Interesting.
Right.
Okay.
So it's about that perception again.
I'm seeing how these ideas can be applied to so many areas.
It's a broad framework.
It's not just politics or warfare.
No.
It's about understanding the dynamics of influence.
In any interaction.
In every interaction.
Yeah.
The more you understand those dynamics, the more effectively you can navigate them.
Absolutely.
Whether you're negotiating a raise,
Yes.
pitching a new idea,
A new idea.
or just trying to get your point across in a meeting.
Getting your point across.
This has been really insightful.
It has.
I feel like I'm starting to see the world through a new lens.
Maybe a Machiavellian lens?
A Machiavellian lens, perhaps.
A little bit.
Just a little bit.
But remember, knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
The more you understand about how these dynamics work, the better equipped you'll be to make those decisions.
Informed decisions.
And achieve your goals.
Okay. I completely agree.
Good.
We've covered a lot of ground,
We have.
but there's still so much to explore.
There is.
What else do we have in store for our listeners?
Well, in this final part,
Final part,
get
okay.
even more practical.
Even more practical.
Okay. We'll delve into some specific examples
I get
and
it.
case studies to see how these Machiavellian principles play out
Uh-huh.
in the real world.
Okay.
And we'll give you some actionable advice
Actionable advice
on how to use this knowledge
to your advantage.
to your advantage.
I like it. I'm excited.
Me too.
All right, so welcome back. I'm really excited to put these principles into action. You know, we've covered a lot of ground, analyzing his ideas, and even starting to apply them to our own lives.
Yeah, and in this final part, we're going to get even more hands-on.
Okay.
We'll examine some real-world case studies and create a framework you can use to start integrating these insights into your own life.
So it's not just theory.
It's about application.
It's about making Machiavelli work for us in the 21st century. I like it.
Exactly.
So where should we start?
Let's revisit one of Machiavelli's most potent and often misunderstood principles,
Okay.
the strategic use of fear.
Fear.
I know it sounds a bit jarring,
Yeah.
especially in our modern context,
Right.
but bear with me.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Okay.
But let's be clear.
Yeah.
We're not talking about being tyrannical
Yeah.
or intentionally intimidating people.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Remember, Machiavelli saw fear as a tool
To it.
to be used sparingly and strategically,
Okay.
primarily to deter bad behavior
Okay.
and establish a sense of order.
So it's not about aggression. It's more like setting boundaries
Exactly.
and consequences.
Clear consequences.
Okay, I get it.
Okay, good.
So how does this play out in the real world?
Well, history's full of examples.
Give me an example.
One that stands out is the Roman Empire.
Okay. For Romans.
They were masters of using a combination of military strength
Okay.
and carefully cultivated reputation to maintain control over their vast territories.
So like speak softly and carry a big stick.
You got it.
They projected an image of power.
That discouraged challenges.
Yeah, nobody wanted to mess with the Romans.
Exactly.
Okay.
They understood that sometimes just the mere perception of strength can be more effective than actual force.
Interesting.
And this principle isn't limited to ancient empires.
Okay.
Think about successful CEOs or negotiators.
Okay.
They might not be physically intimidating,
Right.
but they command respect, their knowledge, their experience,
Yeah.
and the perception that they are not to be trifled with.
Don't mess with them.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's not about being a bully.
No.
It's about having that aura
Cultivating that aura.
of competence and authority.
That makes people think twice before crossing you.
Makes you think twice.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's strategic. Okay.
And it can be really useful in situations where you need to establish credibility
Okay.
or set boundaries.
Boundaries like we talked about.
Exactly like we talked about with relationships.
Like in a negotiation.
Yes. Think about dealing with a difficult colleague or negotiating a raise.
Yeah.
Projecting confidence and a clear understanding of your worth can significantly influence the outcome.
It can.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about adaptability.
Okay. Adaptability.
Another one of Machiavelli's core principles.
Yeah, he was writing in a time of constant upheaval.
Oh, yeah, back then.
Alliances shifted fortunes could change overnight.
Yeah, crazy.
So how do we translate that kind of agility to our modern lives?
Right, how does that apply to us?
Well, the tech industry provides some great examples.
Okay, tech industry.
Think about companies like Apple or Google.
Okay, yeah.
They've achieved phenomenal success
They have.
by constantly innovating
Uh-huh.
taking risks, and pivoting when necessary.
Pivoting when necessary.
They're always one step ahead, it seems.
Yeah.
Anticipating trends and shifting strategies to stay on top.
It's like they're playing a different game.
They are. They're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers.
So what's the key takeaway for us? How do we cultivate that kind of adaptability?
It starts with being open to new information and perspectives.
Okay. Be open-minded.
Open-minded.
Okay.
Don't get stuck in your ways.
Don't be stubborn.
Right. Or be afraid to change your mind when presented with new evidence.
Okay.
Cultivate that growth mindset.
Growth mindset.
Always seeking to learn and expand your skill set.
Always be learning.
Always be learning.
Okay, so be flexible mentally and strategically.
Exactly.
And be willing to step outside of our comfort zones.
Yes.
Embrace challenges.
Embrace the challenge.
Right.
And it's also about being proactive.
Okay.
Anticipating those roadblocks and having backup plans in place.
Backup plans. I like it.
Remember Machiavelli's emphasis on self-reliance? Part of that is having the foresight to prepare for different scenarios, not just reacting to events as they unfold.
So plan ahead.
Plan ahead.
Okay. I'm starting to see how all of these principles, strategic use of fear, adaptability, self-reliance, even the power of appearances,
I'll tie together.
they can all work together to help us navigate challenges and achieve our goals.
Absolutely.
It's like a more effective approach.
It's a holistic approach.
And the beauty of Machiavelli's work is that it's a framework.
It is.
But it doesn't dictate a rigid set of rules.
No, you have to adapt it.
It's about adapting these principles to your personality, your values.
Your own unique situation.
And your circumstances.
Exactly.
So it's not about being Machiavellian.
Yeah.
It's about integrating these insights in a way that feels authentic.
That feels right for you.
And aligns with our goals.
And aligns with your values.
Exactly.
Remember, knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
The more you understand about how these dynamics work,
the better
equipped you'll be to make informed decisions and create the kind of life you want.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive.
That has.
Into The Prince.
Machiavelli's classic.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I would encourage everyone to continue exploring Machiavelli's ideas.
Okay.
Read The Prince.
Read the book.
Reflect on how these principles show up in your own life.
Yeah, see them in action.
And most importantly, experiment.
Experiment.
Try things out.
See what works for you.
Adapt.
Adapt your approach as needed.
And remember that the game,
whatever game you're playing,
is constantly evolving.
Constantly evolving.
All right, great advice. And remember, as with any tool, these principles can be used for good or ill.
They can.
It's up to us to wield them responsibly. Ethically. And with a clear understanding of the consequences.
The potential consequences.
Well, thanks for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive into ideas that matter.
See you next time.